Hello, world, and thanks for listening to Master English with Tim, the podcast where Tim teaches you English in depth and detail and without ever hurrying. I'm Tim, native speaker of English from the United States, English teacher since 2005, world traveler, polyglot, podcaster for 96 episodes, and author of several resources for learning English. In this week's episode, we are returning to one of my favorite topics. That topic is word roots. And in this case, it's a word root that comes from Latin. So a word root is a specific group of sounds or letters that can be found at the beginning of a word or in the middle of it, and which has a specific meaning. One example of a word root is bl or pl, so BL or PL, which is connected with things that are round or have air in them. That particular root actually comes from a language that was spoken around 7,000 years ago, and which, over the course of many centuries, developed into English. If you want to learn more about that specific root, then listen to episode 34. Now, this episode, of course, we're going to talk about a different root, and right now I want to come back, though, to the topic of word roots more generally and why they're useful. So, many times, you can find the same root in many words. That means that if you know the root, you can sometimes understand words that you've never seen before, and it also means that you can more easily learn those words that contain that same root. If you like learning word roots or are curious about them, then I can also suggest episodes 15, 19, and 85. So, in this week's episode, I'm going to focus on just one root, one that, like I said, comes from Latin. That root is air, which is pronounced like the word air, like the air that a person breathes, but it's written differently and it has a different meaning. So the air that we're talking about today is written E-R-R. And in fact, that root E-R-R, or air, is also our first word of the day, and it is a verb. I'm going to give you the original and kind of old-fashioned meaning of this word, because understanding this meaning will help you to understand all of the other meanings more easily. Now, imagine that you are on the island of Corsica in the Mediterranean Sea, very concrete, specific place. Corsica is a very rocky, kind of dry place with some mountains. The highest mountain on Corsica is called Monte Cinto, and it is 2,706 meters tall. Corsica, the island itself, is about 180 kilometers long. So, imagine that you are walking across Corsica north to south, along a path for walkers through the tall mountains. You'll need to be really careful, because if you aren't, you will err from the path, or leave the path, and get lost in a gray, rocky landscape with plants that cut you and with very little water to drink. So, the original meaning of the verb err is to leave the path that you are traveling on. Now, this meaning of err that I just told you about is pretty uncommon nowadays, but it does show the base meaning of the root that you can find in all the words that contain this root. Now, in modern English, on the other hand, if a person errs, that means that they make a decision that is a mistake because they believed something that wasn't true. 3 examples. 1. She erred in trusting a man she just met with her private information. 2. We erred in putting so much effort and time into a product without checking if people really wanted to buy it. 3rd and last. A lot of smart people erred in thinking that only positive effects would come from the increased access to information that the internet offers. So this word err is kind of literary, kind of bookish. Probably you felt that, and it definitely is of an advanced level. So far you have seen 2 meanings of err. One is to leave a path, and the other, derivative meaning, is to make a mistake. And you will see one or both of these meanings in every word that contains the root. Before we move on to the next word with the root err, let me share with you all a nice expression in English that uses the root, err. To understand this expression, you need to understand a word that is connected with religion. That word is divine, D-I-V-I-N-E, divine. If something is divine, it is connected with God or God's actions. For example, some people think that God has a big plan for everything that is going to happen in their lives. You could call that plan a divine plan. Now, in more conversational English, something that is divine is so wonderful or beautiful that only God could have made it. And so this word is one that rarely gets used. Something has to be of rare wonder or beauty for someone to use the word divine when talking about it. So, if you're used to eating at Burger King, and now you're in a 5-star restaurant, you might say that the food there is divine. Or if you were really, really tired, you'd slept badly for over a month, and then finally slept very, very deeply and peacefully for a long time, you could say that you had a divine sleep. So, I said that I would give you an expression that uses our target verb err and our word divine. The expression is, to err is human, to forgive is divine. This just means that everyone makes mistakes, but that not everyone forgives the mistakes of others, and that when a person forgives someone, it proves that the forgiver is a special and good person. Could be a little bit of a dangerous idea depending on who you tell that to. Anyways, let's move on to our next word with the root err in it. The next word is an adjective. It's erratic. That's spelled E-R-R-A-T-I-C. If something is erratic, it does not move in a straight line, but instead moves unpredictably, changing directions for no clear reason. Think now of a couple flying insects. One, a nice big yellow and black bee, and the other, a small disgusting little fly, the kind that lands on your food and tries to eat it. Both of them fly in a way that's very erratic. They're always changing directions. Also, some rivers are very erratic. If you look at them on a map, they don't follow a straight line, but instead curve left and then right again, and so on. We can also say that a person or their behavior is erratic. If, for example, someone really likes to go to the gym and exercise, but then starts smoking and quits after 7 months, and gets angry and quits their job that they've had for a long time, and makes unexpected large purchases, has unexpected emotions that can't be explained, and so on, and is just generally unpredictable, we can say that that person is erratic. We also have an adverb of erratic, which is erratically. So again, if someone behaves erratically, they behave unpredictably. So let's talk about our next word with the root err. That word is error, written E-R-R-O-R, and which just means mistake. So you can have errors in pronunciation. I know that I do when I speak other languages, or grammatical errors, which I think I have less of. If you are trying to visit a web page that for some reason does not work, then you will see an error message on your screen. If someone marries a person who doesn't suit them, then that's a serious error. If you normally make good decisions, but this time you made a bad one, then you had an error in judgment. We also have an adjective that comes from error. The adjective of error is erroneous. That's written E-R-R-O-N-E-O-U-S, erroneous. So what are some things that can be erroneous? There are erroneous impressions, erroneous beliefs, erroneous statements, erroneous decisions, and erroneous plans. Let's put a few of those combinations into sentences. 3 examples. 1. I was under the erroneous impression that they are brother and sister, but in fact, they're a couple. 2. You seem to have the erroneous belief that I want or even need your help, but I can do it all myself, thank you. 3rd and last. The internet is full of people who think they are experts, making erroneous statements on all kinds of topics. Okay, now let's come back to our original root of err and add some suffixes to the end of it to create some more words. The first word we can create is errand. That's E-R-R-A-N-D. What is an errand? Well, an errand is a very short trip that is not part of your routine. So, for example, is going to the supermarket an errand? Well, I would say no, because an errand is a trip that's not part of your routine. But maybe if you went to the supermarket, not for your weekly shopping, but instead to buy a specific ingredient for a cake you're baking, then that trip might qualify as an errand. It might be an errand. Now, let me give you some more concrete examples of errands. Oh, before I start, let me say that you don't make an errand. Instead, you run an errand. You can often hear people say, I need to run an errand. So, if you have a really nice suit, but you've worn it several times and it's now a bit dirty, you might pay a small business to clean it for you. In that case, you would need to drive your suit to the business and pay for the suit to be cleaned. That would be an example of running an errand, that trip, that drive. You'd also need to run another errand to pick the suit up once again, once it has been cleaned. If you go to the post office to send an important package, that's also an example of running an errand. You might be wondering what an errand has to do with air. Well, remember that the original meaning of the verb err, which was to leave the path that you were traveling on. So, if you think of your normal routine as a path, then an errand is a departure from that path. We have another word that is very similar to errand. The word is the adjective errant. That's E-R-R-A-N-T. If something is errant, it is moving unexpectedly, perhaps by accident, in the wrong direction. We use errant in combination with only a few other words. An errant bullet is one that is fired in battle, by mistake, in the wrong direction. Battles are full of chaos, and it's inevitable that someone will shoot a bullet in the wrong direction, not towards the enemy, but towards people who are not involved in the fighting, or even towards soldiers who are from the same country as you. So, you might read occasionally that an innocent person was killed by an errant bullet, or that an errant bullet broke a window. Two other things can be errant, and fortunately they are far less serious. We have errant comments and errant criticisms. An errant comment is a comment that is not part of the main line or main path of a conversation. Sometimes, an errant comment can get you into trouble. Imagine, for instance, that the company that you work for just got a new general manager and a few new employees. After work one Friday night, you and one of the new employees go out to a bar and play some billiards. The two of you talk and get to know each other and talk about the kinds of things that people talk about when they're getting to know each other. Where you went to university, where you worked before the current company, what your job responsibilities consist of, and so on. At some point in the conversation, you say that the new manager is a good guy and that he's learning about his responsibilities and should become a great manager in just a few weeks. This last comment was an errant comment, and neither of you two continues talking about it. Now, the next Monday, you come into the office, and there's an email in your inbox from your immediate supervisor asking to talk to her immediately. You go into her office, and she tells you that over the weekend, she got a phone call from a new employee. This was the one you played billiards with, and he said that you said that the new general manager didn't know how to do his job. You immediately understand that she's talking about the errant comment that you made about the manager learning to do his job. You explain the situation to her, apologize, and then go to the general manager and do the same thing with him. And you decide to never make errant comments about other employees, especially managers, ever again. Actually, I want to add something to this story. This story is not my own. I saw it on a YouTube video and would gladly say who made the video, but I cannot find it in my search history. Anyways, finally, we have one last word with the root air, and that's one that even most native speakers don't know, except maybe if they have worked in publishing. This word is errata. That's spelled E-R-R-A-T-A. And errata is a list of mistakes in a magazine, newspaper, or book, and which is usually added to the next publication in the series. For example, you have the February 2nd edition of a newspaper, and the version of the newspaper for February 3rd includes the errata for the previous day. In older times, when all publications were paper ones, an errata was usually a small piece of paper that listed the mistakes in a book and was simply put by hand between two of the book's pages so any reader could easily notice the errata and the corrections it contained. Okay, that is all the words for this week. I hope you enjoyed hearing about this specific word root and the words that contain it. Thanks for listening, everybody, and see you all next Monday.